upon the particular quadrants. One more method which is used is based upon the isoelectric QRS. So in this particular ECG, in the limb leads, lead AVL is showing the almost isoelectric, where R wave is slightly more than the S wave, whereas the other limb leads do not show much of a S wave. So the lead which is perpendicular, that is at 90 degrees to the particular isoelectric or biphasic QRS, will be the direction of the QRS axis. So in this, if AVL is having a particular biphasic lead, then the perpendicular lead to that is lead 2, and that is around 60 degrees, which is the normal axis of the patient. So in this particular ECG, you can see that taking the two things into consideration, the lead 2 height of the R wave is more than the lead 2, and it is also more than AVF, saying that this is belongs to the right lower quadrant, and that is the normal axis for the patient. So the other method which I told is using lead 1 and AVF. Lead 1 QRS is positive and AVF QRS is also positive. So that means when both are positive, the quadrant is right lower, which is the normal axis. So let us see how it works out for the right axis deviation. In this particular ECG, you can see the height of the QRS, that is predominantly the R wave, is the maximum in lead 3, and it is more than the next neighboring lead, that is AVF. So height of this R wave is lead 3, and it is more than even other leads also. So naturally, by using single lead, you can estimate that it is belongs to the left lower quadrant, that is right axis deviation. If you take lead 1 and AVF method, in that also you can see that lead 1 is predominantly negative and AVF is predominantly positive. So in such a case, as we have discussed, it belongs to the right axis deviation. In this, you can see the right ventricular hypertrophy in lead V1, where the height of R wave is about 10 millimeters or more. There is abnormal T wave inversions in V1, V2. I will discuss about it later. But what I want to focus is on the right axis deviation in with this, where the lead 3 is again showing the height of the R wave, which is the highest among all the limb leads, and it is more than its neighboring leads of lead 2 and AVF, which is here. And if you take lead 1 and AVF also, in which case lead 1 is predominantly negative and AVF is positive, showing that it is right axis deviation. Coming to left axis deviation, in this category, the predominant R wave will be in lead AVL. It will be more than that of lead 1, which is its neighboring lead. And in this, you can confirm that it is AVL is more than lead 1 and more than all the other limb leads. So definitely the axis is left axis. So if you use the other method, then also you can see the lead 1 is predominantly positive and AVF is predominantly negative. So it belongs to the right upper quadrant, which is again left axis deviation. In some ECGs, rarely there is no clear cut R waves which are, or the S wave which are dominant, in which case you may not be able to determine the axis. In northwest axis, AVR will have the highest increase in the R wave, and it is more than any other height of the R waves in the limb leads. And in this ECG, you can see that height of R wave is the highest in AVR, and both lead 1 is negative and AVF also is negative, putting it into the northwest or the extreme right axis deviation. Pardon? Yes. In case of dextrocardia with situs solitus, the P waves will be upright, but the progression of the QRS will be in the opposite direction. That is, from V1 to V6, there is reverse progression. The height of the R waves will be more in V1, but definitely just by looking at it, this will be only one of the differential diagnosis, because it will even in right ventricular hypertrophy in particular patients, you can have the R wave more than height of S wave. And just by looking at this, you cannot clearly say that it is right axis. However, if there is a P wave inversion in lead 1 and AVL along with the reverse progression of the R waves from V1 to V6, then you can say that yes, there is both situs inverses. Situs inverses indirectly, it means atria are inverted. The P waves, when they are inverted in lead 1 and AVL, that indicates the atria have inverted. And when you say the reverse progression of the QRS is present in V1 to V6, that means the ventricles are in the inverted position. That is, left is more toward on the right side and right ventricle is more on the left side. So these are two features which will help to identify whether atria is inverted and whether ventricle is inverted. And whenever atria is inverted, usually that is means the situs is also inverted. So what are the causes of axis deviation? Sometimes you can have a normal variation of right axis deviation, but more importantly, when you have right axis deviation, you have to think about other things which needs to be ruled out. That is, right ventricular pressure overload, right ventricular volume overload, cor pulmonale, pulmonary embolisms, or pulmonary stenosis. These are the common conditions where you can get right axis deviation. Other less common entities may be extensive infarctions of the lateral wall, dextrocardia, left-sided pneumothorax pushing the heart towards the right side, or left posterior hemiblocks. Left axis deviation, on the other hand, can also be a normal variant in a small group of individuals, but more importantly, when there is left axis deviation, you should think about myocardial infarction, left anterior fascicular block or hemiblock, hypertrophy of the left ventricle, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and dilated cardiomyopathy. These are the common causes of left axis deviation. So this is an example of left axis deviation with the right bundle branch block. The right bundle branch block we will discuss later. Briefly, what I want to say is, in right bundle branch block you will have a wide QRS in V1 of more than 120 milliseconds duration, and there is a wide S wave in lead V6 and lead AVL, and there is RS R dash pattern in lead V1. That apart, more importantly, the left axis deviation, what I want to show is that in left axis deviation, lead AVL should have the highest R wave, and you can see that height of R wave is maximum in lead AVL compared to other leads, and it is predominantly a positive deflection in 1 and negative deflection in AVF. In case of LVBB with left axis, you will have a broad QRS in lead 1, AVL, V5 and V6 along with the T wave inversions, and there is a prominent QRS in lead AVL compared to all other leads, confirming left axis deviation. Coming to conditions where you can get low voltage complexes. Low voltage by definition means that the voltage is less than 5 millimeters in the limb leads, that is maximum limb leads, not necessarily each and every one. Majority of the limb leads will show less than 5 millimeters, 1 or 2 misses may be there, and in case of precordial leads, less than 10 millimeter voltage will be seen. So common causes include obesity, myxedema, COPD patients, but the classical teaching is large pericardial effusion. So this is an example where you can see that all the voltages are much less compared to the normal. Especially you can appreciate it in the limb leads where very low voltages are seen. This is another example where patient has infarction, extensive, resulting in effusion, and there is associated small QRS complexes. Poor R wave progression of less than 3 millimeter duration is seen in lead V3, and the most common causes include the anterior wall MI and COPD. Less commonly you can see it in LVBB, dextrocardia, and low diaphragmatic position or high electrode positioning. So you can see in this example that lead V1, V2 and V3 hardly have any R waves, and only in V4 the R waves are clearly found, which indicates a poor R wave progression, usually seen in COPD and sometimes in evolved anterior wall myocardial infarction. This is again another example of COPD patient which is having poor R wave progression. Chamber hypertrophy. I will quickly go through the chamber hypertrophy. The left atrial enlargement is said to be present if P wave is very broad and notched and the width is more than 120 milliseconds, and it is inverted. Terminal portion of the P wave is inverted in V1. Here you can see there is terminal inversion of P wave in V1, and there is a broad P waves in lead 2, an example of mitral stenosis where you get this kind of enlargement. Right atrial enlargement commonly seen in cor pulmonale. You can have tall peaked P waves in inferior leads of more than 2.5 mm in size, and the positive component of P wave is also predominant in V1. Here you can see prominent peaked P wave in lead 2 helping us to diagnose cor pulmonale. However, V1 is not showing clear cut such feature. So when both the criteria are met, you can say a patient has biatrial enlargement, may be seen in mitral stenosis with hypertrophied right atrium secondary to pulmonary artery hypertension. In right ventricular hypertrophy, the classical finding is the R wave height has suddenly increased. Normally it is very minuscule in lead V1, and when its height becomes more than S wave, it means that right ventricle is hypertrophied and its height is usually more than 5 mm. Or if there is a RS R dash pattern in V1, then R dash size will be more than 10 mm. Third feature we can use is the use of right axis deviation to identify right ventricular hypertrophy. And the fourth criteria which we can use, it is not necessary that all these criteria should be present in one person, any one of them may be present. And the fourth criteria is R in V1 plus S wave in V5 or V6 is 11 mm or more. So this is an example of right ventricular hypertrophy, where in V1 you can see that height is more than 10 mm in length. Left ventricular hypertrophy, on the other hand, based upon the Sokolos criteria, where the amplitude of S wave in V1 and R wave in V5 or V6 is more than 35 mm, or you can use the second criteria, that is R wave height in AVL is more than 11 mm. Less commonly you can use the Cornell's criteria, where 20 mm height of the S plus R in V3 and AVL is seen in females, whereas it is 28 mm in males. This is an example where there is V5 and V6. So by Sokolos criteria, there is at least 20 to 25 mm increase in the R wave height in V5, V6, plus the height of S wave. If you add, it will come to about 40-45 mm, indicating left ventricular hypertrophy. And both the criteria may be present in the same patient, we can say there is biventricular hypertrophy. This is an example of an ECG where is right atrial enlargement in the form of tall P waves. There is right ventricular hypertrophy here in the form of R more than S, and there is a right axis deviation where lead 3 has the highest height of the R waves. And this is an example of left atrial enlargement where there is the inverted P is seen in lead V1, and the hypertrophy is there in V5 and V6, plus some secondary STT changes due to hypertrophy is seen in this particular ECG. Thank you. Any questions?
One question is, while calculating the voltage for low voltage and high voltage, 5 mm, while calculating the voltage for either low or high voltage, calculating from the baseline or total R plus S?
Total.
One question is, while calculating the voltage for low voltage and high voltage, 5 mm, while calculating the voltage for either low or high voltage, calculating from the baseline or total R plus S?
Total. It is total. Thank you.
By looking at the lead 1 and lead 3,
Pardon, sir?
R wave in lead 1 and lead 3, looking at these three leads only, can you say that left axis or right axis? If QRS complex is longer in lead 1, we can say it is left axis. Lead 3, if QRS complex is longer in lead 3, we can say right
Yes,
axis.
yes.
By doing rounds and all, Doing rounds in the ward and all, we cannot calculate with reference system and all.
Correct.
Can you say
Yes,
on the
yes, that
these
is,
two?
that is why I told the single lead method, which becomes
Yes, lead 1 and lead 3. Sir.
usually it is accurate in 90% of the cases. If lead 3 is showing the maximum height of R wave,
You can
then
say
it's
right axis.
If AVL is showing maximum height, that means left axis.
Thank you, sir.
If in between it is showing, then it is normal axis. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next session is by Dr. Syed, intervention cardiologist from Father Willow Medical College, and he will be speaking on sinus node disease and ECG manifestation.
Good evening to you all. All are awake, I feel. Or are you sleeping? The ECG workshop, I thought there will be some kind of an interaction is required. Heart is a very fascinating organ. Why it is so? It has to work throughout the time without any break, just like working as a motor pump, where the motor pump pumps the water, what the heart does, it pumps the blood. For which to work, you need to have an electrical energy. It can convert it into a mechanical energy, where heart itself is having an intrinsic energy. Have you ever thought of that? The heart, how many times in a lifespan the heart is beating? More than 2.5 billion times beat is happening in a lifespan. And 1.5 million liter of blood is pumping in a lifetime. What a fascinating organ. Now my topic concludes for anatomy of anatomy of the conductive system, sinus node and its blood supply, and various associated diseases of a sinus node like a sinus arrhythmia, sinus pause and exit, and sick sinus syndrome. The conductive system implies that it is the electrical pathway of an electrical impulse that causes a heartbeat. Very simple. Where it begins? It begins from the SA node. It is called as electrical powerhouse. Electrical powerhouse of the heart. SA node, it has been situated in the right atrium at the junction of the SVC or at the upper end of the sulcus terminalis, a specialized cells which has got its own activity for producing the electrical current. It doesn't depend on anybody else. Its automaticity is being the faster than any parts in the heart. It has taken up a beat between 60 and 100 beats per minute. Now comes to the second part. The sinus node generates an impulse or start activating, sending impulse to the AV node. You should keep in mind that it forms an electrical impulse from the SA node and it is going into the AV node at a speed bit lesser. That means it has got a property for a backup pacemaker. So from SA node to AV node, it conducts little slowly. It is called a speed breaker. We have a speed breaker there. So SA node sends the impulse to the AV node and it delivers the impulse to the other system through the Purkinje system and the other cardiac muscles, ventricles, and forming a cardiac contractions. It takes up by its own. If the SA node fails, it takes up the second backup pacemaker that is about 40 to 60 beats per minute. A small structure is there, that is a bundle of His. It's a delay occurs in there and it has been conducting to the bundle branches and to the Purkinje cells and forming the ventricular contraction. If SA node fails, AV node take up. AV node fails, the Purkinje or the bundle branch take up at the speed of 20 to 40 beats per minute. Now, if you look at this scenario, if the atria or sinus node, the impulse transfers through interatrial nodes, both atria, left and right atria depolarizes. that means it contracts, it produces a waveform called a P wave. It has been mentioned in the previous speaker, I just mentioning. There is a delay happening, reaching into the AV node, then you have forming a PR interval. This delay, most of the part of the PR interval, that is the conduction time taking to the delay between the SA node to the AV node, that delay is representing as the PR interval, and then it is going into the bundle branches. There is also the conduction time is taking the later part of the PR interval. Again, they is going into the ventricular sector and through the Purkinje fibers and forming the ventricular contraction. So entire part is a ventricular contraction called depolarization. Why the delay is happening? It is a time given for the atria to fill, or the contraction and ventricle to fill the blood. That is the time which is being given for this is a natural mechanism. Now these are the plateau phase, as somebody is asking, that the isoelectric segment of the ST, where the body fluid having a current, that is why it takes a little longer time and producing the broad wave called a repolarization wave, that is called a T wave. This is a schematic representation of this mechanism, electrical activity as well as the mechanical function. You cannot isolatedly, you cannot have the mechanical function alone. Electrical current is required to have a mechanical function. That means ECG is not the one only to interpret the entire disease. You may have to correlate sometimes in the echocardiogram as well. What you see in the echocardiogram may not reflect in the ECG. What you see in the ECG may not reflect in the echocardiogram. You might have experienced this fact. This is the brief overview. SA node to AV node, bundle his, then going to the bundle branches under the Purkinje fibers, the entire ventricular muscle into a contractile system. How this schematic representation is correlating with the ECG? You have SA node to AV node, thereby the atrial repolarization taking place. Then AV node, part of the PR interval, then entire QRS complex, that means the ventricular contraction occurs, that is the ventricular depolarization. The remaining part is called ventricular repolarization. Now, summary, SA node is a electrical powerhouse. AV node is a backup pacemaker. Ventricular cells are again backup pacemaker. It takes its own way. How is